You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WYBC. Normally I don't start the show just like this, but Allison, if you are out there on 93 WYBC, hello. Just as a quick note to you and the board op crew for the radio syndication side of things, we are actively tracking a NATO situation regarding the United States Navy in the Caribbean. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. If we need to bring you guys back early from some kind of a commercial, we'll communicate that to you. Again, a lot of developing situations around the world despite the news at hand. So that's just kind of a little fair warning. I try to keep Allison on her toes the best as we can. So that said, let's dig right into what has been a very, very tragic day in Minneapolis. What can only be described as a horrendous terror attack at Annunciation Catholic School inside the Annunciation Church during morning mass. If you went to a Christian or a Catholic school growing up, you know morning mass or morning chapel. It's something that is supposed to be a precious moment of private prayer, and perhaps a sermon that is important, that is foundational. Daily devotion to God is foundational to ensuring one's walk with the Lord is a mainstay in one's life. And the same in Judaism, the times of the day in which you are to pray and give honor and praise, blessed be the name of the Lord, these are critical moments. And at this most precious time, an individual, and we are going to say the name of the shooter because there is some controversy surrounding it. An individual, Robert Westman, who changed his name to Robin Westman, trying to go as a female, 23 years old, went into the school and began shooting children and adults alike, but targeting the children specifically. Two children were shot dead. 14 other children were shot, but are now in either in stable condition or in a condition in which officials have stated they are expected to survive. And then 3 adults, 19 victims total. This is an individual who was openly transgender and made that a core part of their very, very mentally ill persona. Now, there are a lot of photographs that are all over the internet. This individual was very public about their plan to, or about his plan to go and shoot up this particular school before he did so. According to available information, his mother at one time was a staff member of that school. There is some information that says that he may have been a student at the school previously. This would also fit with the previous Nashville transgender shooter who attacked the Christian school there. But at 17 years old, Robert formally had his legal name changed to Robin because the documents state, and these documents were dug up by Tyler O'Neill, my colleague over at the Daily Signal. You can read a lot of his stuff over there. That, quote, the minor child identifies as female and wants her name to reflect the identification. Now, the reason that I state this up front is that, first of all, there are a large number of journalists in the legacy media sphere who are, what I was told was dead naming the individual. They are using his original name as a male and referring to him as he, which I was told was a very bad thing to do, that you didn't actually draw this kind of attention to it, and it is journalistic malpractice. Either you are going to adhere to your own standards on the transgender pronoun issues, or you are not. And we're going to get to why this matters here in a couple of minutes, but I want to get to one particularly powerful clip. One young man did approach the cameras today who was at the shooting, and he tells a very harrowing story of another student who is now in the hospital receiving treatment for being shot, who saved this young man's life. Check it out.
What happened with him? Is he okay?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be okay. And then my friend, he was like laying on top of me, like making sure I was safe, and he got hit. So that was really brave of him.
And you have a neck on your neck?
Yeah, that was, I don't even know what it's from. Kind of looks like debris or something.
But that came from during this.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You seem pretty put together here, but it's got to be tough.
Yeah, I'm just like confused.
Again, suffering from shock. And I will also say that blessed be the name of the Lord, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, be upon the students and their families. I, like many Americans today, as I'm sure most of you, prayed for the victims, prayed for the families, prayed for the communities in Minneapolis. That is not a response that a lot of people in the country shared. And we're going to get to that. But right up front, it is clear based on all the evidences, I am not going to go through all of the guy released a video manifesto that was up and then has been taken down, but too late, people have it. It is widely believed at this point to be confirmed as the individual's manifesto. He left a written manifesto, suicide notes, very disturbing journal entries. He scrawled in white paint pen a bunch of phrases on the rifle and the magazines from the shooting that said, quote, "Kill Trump," quote, "For the children," quote, "Destroy Israel," quote, "6 million wasn't enough." That's obviously in reference to the Holocaust. And then a lot of different racial slurs. So that said, a lot of disturbing stuff. There have been some allegations by colleagues of mine and kind of co-streamers and broadcasters on the right side of the aisle, given sketches that the transgender shooter sketched in the manifesto that showed the individual looking into a mirror and a demon-esque figure looking back, saying this was clearly demon possession. I believe that the manifesto was written in some form of Cyrillic. Was it Russian? What was the Cyrillic text? What language was that? Do we know yet, producer Nick? No? Okay. So a lot of stuff that I'm not going to show. Number one, because I don't want this video taken down prematurely. And number two, because we do try to keep this show at a level of age appropriateness that it can be watched by, parents who have their kids in the room. So based on the evidence that we have, this is yet another shooting that was caused by an individual acting in favor, in interest of the transgender community by a member of the transgender community who is severely mentally ill, which again, transgenderism is in and of itself a mental illness. The soft, cuddly words of left-leaning officials and Democrats and the legacy media who have made up terms like gender-affirming care to hide this ridiculous affirmation blindly and not even scientific, pseudo-academic babble has enabled directly, and I want to be very clear with my words, has directly enabled actions like these to take place. And we're going to get to why I am leveling that specifically here. Because again, some of colleagues, well, not directly complicit, just maybe ancillary. I am to the point, after seeing Nashville, after seeing other incidents around the country, now seeing this in Minneapolis, in which a mentally ill person was provoked. Like telling a schizophrenic person, you can hear the toaster talking too, and they should listen to the toaster talking for instructions. That is exactly what has happened with the people suffering from gender dysphoria. Hypermedicating them, encouraging them to mutilate their bodies and act in opposition to their biology and healthy mental habits. And then telling them that they're going to die and they're going to be swept aside by fascists. So we're going to get into some of the responses here. First of all, grossly incompetent. The police chief of Minneapolis, Brian O'Hara, saying just right off the top of the bat, no known motive, despite all of the stuff that, again, on the rifle itself, the intentions of the shooting. Here's the police chief.
So the question was on a possible motive and a relationship to the church or to the school. I have no information to share on a motive other than saying, again, that there was some sort of manifesto that was timed to come out on YouTube. It's been taken down, and our investigators are going through that.
This is not like this is not as though he was cryptic in the manifesto. It is very, very, very blatant. It is a mentally ill person claiming that they are fighting for the trans community, claiming that they are fighting to free Palestine, and that they hate themselves and they no longer want to be alive. A lot of other really horrific stuff. Grossly incompetent, grossly irresponsible. Radio crew, we do have to send you over to the commercial side of things. We'll be back in a second. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Producer Nick with a slight clarification here. The phonetic usage of Cyrillic and then some use of Russian, there are individuals that are currently going through and translating portions of the manifesto which appear to be written in different fashion. I believe the New York Post has a team working on it. Yes.
That's why it's taking so long to translate.
That's why it's taking so long to translate. Thank you, producer Nick. Okay, so the FBI's response was far more appropriate. So Kash Patel, there are no, at this point in time, 7:16, almost 7:17 Eastern on Wednesday, August 27th. Right now, there has not been any Department of Homeland Security or FBI spokesperson that has taken the podium to answer questions from the press. But FBI Director Kash Patel has been keeping the nation abreast over via social media statements. So at 10:45 a.m., he said, "We are aware of reports of a shooting at a Catholic school in Minnesota. FBI agents are on scene, and we ask everyone to keep potential victims, civilians, or law enforcement who are currently in harm's way in your prayers. The FBI will provide updates as more info becomes available." And then later this afternoon at 3:22, he posted updates on the shooting. They were investigating the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. And then he describes the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old who were murdered by this transgender shooter, and then says the FBI will continue to provide updates on our ongoing investigation with the public as we're able. Now we get to the way that officials directly involved with the situation responded. So in a correct response, and I want to be clear, very little of this is subjective in the common sense. So in the way that you and I understand things, there is a way to respond to things like this and ways not to respond based on common human decency. So in the correct response camp, President Trump says, "I've been fully briefed on the tragic shooting in Minneapolis. The FBI responded quickly and they're on the scene. The White House will continue to monitor this terrible situation. Please join me in praying for everyone involved." Then the president ordered flags at the White House and some federal buildings to be flown at half-staff in memoriam of the victims of this disgusting shooting. Vice President J.D. Vance said, "We are monitoring the situation at the White House. Join all of us in praying for the victims." Keep that in mind, again, because this is not considered the appropriate response to a lot of individuals who you have been told are the most kind and empathetic and loving individuals out there, who tell you whether or not you are being kind and empathetic. From Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, he says, "Minnesota is heartbroken. From the officers responding to the clergy and teachers providing comfort to the hospital staff saving lives, we will get through this together. Hug your kids close." That's not the right response. After individuals have been murdered, your immediate response is, "We're going to get through this together," is heartless and it is calloused and it is disgusting. And it is fitting with Tim Walz's response to these kinds of things in the past. But I digress. Now we're going to get to some of the worst of the local officials. Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Allison said at around noon today, "While the facts of this tragic situation are still unfolding, we know the victims are children at a house of worship." At a house of worship. Because God forbid you just say Catholic church, a house of worship. When there is a person in a mosque attacked, they don't say house of worship. When it's a synagogue, they don't say it's a house of worship. They state the place of worship by its denominational name. But whenever it is a Christian church, a Protestant church, a Catholic church, an Eastern Orthodox church, it is always obscured. He talks about being in contact with the leaders. He does say that his prayers are with the victims and those involved. He asks Minnesotans to join in deepest condolences to all families involved, and then he denounces gun violence. "There are too many shootings like it," he says, "with Minnesota children being the latest victims. We can't continue as society to treat these mass shootings like they're isolated events. Instead, we must all rededicate ourselves to building a national resolve to end them once and for all." And we're going to talk about that because he has a political motivation based on statements he made Monday as to why he's already being dishonest about this. And we're going to get into it because you need to know. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now that the radio crew has returned from commercial break, Attorney General Keith Allison made a big show today of pointing out, first of all, to suggest, well, this was just a house of worship that the shooting took place in. And then number two, that it's all to blame for gun violence. It's all gun violence. It's the guns that did it. Now, a lot of people in the United States, including the majority of Americans, currently believe that transgenderism, the idea of telling someone who is already mentally unhealthy that they are a different gender, that they are different, they were born in the wrong body, and that they should lean into that mental imbalance, that they should lean into the voices telling them that they are something different, dress differently, act differently, take different hormones. That Americans believe is the problem. Keith Ellison, Attorney General of Minnesota, does not. And to be clear, this goes all the way back to comments that he made on Monday, where, of course, at the start of the DNC, he says, we're not going to let trans whatever be a scapegoat.
Dude, 44 times, and we'll sue him 44 more and 44 more after that. And we have sued him for gender-affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community. And we have sued him to stand up for medical research, National Institute of...
Again, not going to let trans be a scapegoat. Why would they need to be a scapegoat? Again, the reason that there might be blame cast upon a selection, a common denominator, is that the common denominator in this case is mental illness. It gets worse when you look at the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, who immediately took, again, I told you, right, in the first segment, keep an eye on the individuals suggesting that it, as far as a Catholic church, a Catholic school full of Catholic students praying, keep in mind who's going to respond to prayer. Again, the pattern of incidents is very clear. Jacob Frey responds in one of the most grotesque ways I've seen in a very long time.
Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families.
So far, everything he's saying is fine. Everything he's saying is a good thing so far, and he's going to ruin it.
And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
Keep in mind a couple of things there. First of all, attacking prayer right off the bat. Oh, these were kids praying. They were in church. If, God forbid, again, in the current situation, there have been instances in which many parents in this country have suffered loss. Many of them Christians, many of them Catholics, Protestants, what have you. I have yet to find the parent suffering the loss of a child due to disease, due to the situation that cost them their child, something a parent should never have to bear. None of them have I ever heard say, I don't want your prayers. Again, from Thessalonians, pray without ceasing is one of the basic commands. And the need to desperately, they don't want your prayers. They don't want you, excuse me. No. And why go after prayer? And that's going to be a common theme. Why? Because he got very, very, very upset really quickly that people started noticing the pattern of mentally ill individuals who have been fear-mongered to that they were going to be erased as members of the trans community, who have been told to fight, overtly told to fight. In Minneapolis on Monday, told to fight, told by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to fight constantly. And then when that's criticized, now he's going to say who we're going to stand with. because it's time to stand with someone. We're going to stand with Catholics. Remember Stop Asian Hate? Remember Black Lives Matter? Are we going to stand with Catholics? No. Far more important to Jacob Fry.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity.
Oh, their sense of common humanity. Again, he won't stand in solidarity with Catholics, won't stand in solidarity with Christians, won't stand in solidarity with individuals who are routinely attacked in Minneapolis. But God forbid you point out that mentally unstable individuals perhaps should not be encouraged to act mentally unstable. Perhaps inventing brand new terms in order to make excuses for the lack of scientific evidence supporting telling someone schizophrenic, you can also hear the toaster talking. Perhaps you're ignoring all of that to make a moral high horse statement is loathsome and disgusting. Again, this is the guy who he says, well, you shouldn't be politicizing something like this. This is the guy that made a huge deal not too long ago about making Minnesota a safe haven for trans children, no matter what the rest of the country said. This is also the guy you may remember who was kneeling, crying, and praying at the George Floyd funeral. So as far as the claim about politicization is rather interesting indeed. Now, there's a lot more to dig into here. Of course, reports that Catholic schools in the Minneapolis area specifically requested increased security before this, that according to the Blaze, Governor Tim Walz ignored. We will get into a little of that here pretty soon, but just in interest of staying as kind of on schedule here as possible. The media response to this has been probably the worst I have ever seen. The worst I have ever seen. Just flat out lying in their reporting, leaving out details, flipping things around desperately to suggest this was some kind of a far-right shooter. ABC News, right off the top of the bat, see if you can pick up on what it is they leave out.
23-year-old Robin Westman was able to leave what police called a video manifesto that they're now going through to try and establish motive. We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns.
The name of President Trump written on the guns. Was it just the name of Trump? Because that's what he's trying to insinuate. What was written about Trump? Oh, it said, quote, kill Trump, end quote. Now, why would ABC feel right after they got done talking about the anti-Semitic, the pro-Holocaust, the kill Israel, kill the Jews stuff on the guns, why then would they say Trump was written on that? Because this ABC News was one of the primary outlets pushing the Trumpist anti-Semitic narrative throughout the 2016, 2020, and 2024 election cycles. It's the same crap consistently. And it's not just ABC. MSNBC had a very interesting day regarding this because, of course, they did. One individual on MSNBC is already saying, gee, I wonder what could have radicalized this individual, because it's not that the mental unhealthiness of the transgender community, there must have been some type of external factor.
Did they help motivate him and radicalize him to carry out this shooting? When you use the word radicalize, we tend to think of terror, a more traditional terrorist, something that people came, especially in this country, to seem to be familiar with in the post 9/11 era, right?
Yes, because it's an act of terrorism.
So when you talk about radicalization, you talk about writings that reference suicide, extremely violent thoughts and ideas, and those multiple videos that are posted online.
And, the ideological statements that the shooter made in favor of the trans community and in favor of free Palestine and globalize the Intifada, Zoran Mamdani stuff from New York.
What do these groups do when you say they radicalize?
So, whether it's a terrorist organization or, the variety of ideologies that different people follow, they're following them because they have susceptibility. There's various push-pull factors. Maybe it's some kind of mental break. Maybe it's their life has, gone down the toilet, and they.
Interesting statements. I wonder if there might be some kind of a common denominator among people like this and the Nashville shooter, etc., that might put them in a mentally unstable position to be radicalized. I can't possibly believe. Now, it wasn't just MSNBC and ABC and CNN that were omitting things today. And by the way, I do want to point out CNN, John Miller also played the omission game to push political narrative, disgusting stuff today.
Well, we've been looking into the shooter who law enforcement sources have identified as Robin Westman, and police have been examining some of the postings online by an individual of the same name, presumed to be the same individual, which shows numerous weapons, magazines, things in preparation for the shooting, along with a book and different notes. But one of them is particularly telling in that it says, "I have waited for this for so long. I am not well. I am not right. I am a sad person, haunted by these thoughts that do not go away. I know this is wrong." And he goes on to describe that the action he is going to take against this world before taking his own life, which is not uncommon in these incidents, these active shooter scenarios where you see someone who reports to be in pain, in trauma, and that they write all of this out and leave it behind.
We'll let him finish in a second. Sorry, radio crew. I seem to have lost track of the time. We'll send you guys over to commercial and continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. All right. So again, describing the situation, here's where the omissions come in.
With the foreknowledge that what they're about to do is going to end their own life as well, while taking these strangers, these innocent people, with them in the process. But investigators are going back through this material and a lot of other material trying to determine motive.
Trying to determine motive. Oh, just what would possibly cause an individual to target these people? Just people, just randomly.
What do we know? I mean, what we know, if this in fact is from the shooter, that his motive was he was in pain, but what we don't
his motive was that he was in pain. That's it.
See here, and there's more to go through, is what was the shooter, Robin Westman, in pain about specifically?
Oh man, sure. Again, that's thanks for Media Research Center for Newsbusters for getting that clip. No man, I don't know what it could possibly be about. Sure, on the gun and the magazines, in white paint marker, in bold, easy to read letters, are very clear phrases that say exactly what this person was about. Pro-trans stuff, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish stuff, and kill Trump. Gee, I wonder what his motive could be. I guarantee you, if this was after the Israeli person shot the Palestinian person a couple of months ago, there was not 32 seconds that went by before the media immediately knew all of the motive, done, set, signed, sealed, delivered. When a young high school boy smirked for 3.5 seconds in Washington, D.C. at a Native American man, they knew that Nicholas Sandmann, he was a racist, he was anti-Native American, and he was a fascist, and all of this stuff. But all of a sudden, oh man, I don't possibly know what this could be. Fox News also played this game a little today. Trey Gowdy decided to just go completely loony. Embarrassing. A lot of other Fox News anchors today righted this, but unfortunately, Trey wasn't one of them here.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is, how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands.
So, okay, all right, I see where you're going.
And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children.
No, we're not going to have a conversation on freedom and protecting children. We're not. No. I'm sorry. Limiting guns is not the way out of this one. We've tried this exact thing before. Washington, D.C. Guns are illegal there. That does not prevent shootings in D.C. Appropriate policing prevents things like what happened today in Minneapolis. Appropriate mental health care, as we've already found, not affirming mental illness. Trey Gowdy then decides to take this in the looniest direction possible.
How many school shootings does it take before we're going to have a conversation about keeping firearms out, it's always a young white male.
It's not.
Almost always.
See, there's the almost, because he's wrong.
I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female?
Yes. Yes, there were many posts online asking that particular question. Again, the Nashville shooter. Here we have instances. The common denominator in the situation is not racial nationalism. Do you know why we know that? We have the manifesto. The racial nationalists, when they commit an atrocity like this, are always very clear. This is a racial crime. When the transgender community makes a kind of shooting like this, it is always in the exact same way. It is always that kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, it's just foolish nonsense from Gowdy there. Now, believe it or not, there were some pretty decent takes today, and then there were some atrocious ones. We got to pick up the radio crew from commercial. Don't go anywhere. There's way more. The show's just going to go on tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
The media response to this particular incident today is an excellent argument for why the left has become so unpopular in the United States, why ratings are so bad for many of these places. And I want to go through these specifically with you because you need to have the receipts when you are told, as you're always told, a couple of months from now that, well, it's not like Karine Jean-Pierre, got in front of the entire country right after a bunch of Christian children were gunned down in Nashville and said, the important thing is, standing with the transgender community.
Now, today, on Transgender Day of Remembrance, we grieve the 26 transgender Americans who were killed this year. Year after year, we see that these victims are disproportionately Black women and women of color. No one should face violence, live in fear, or be discriminated against simply.
Right after the Nashville attack. It's always the exact same. You need these receipts. Now, here's where we get into the really gross stuff. CNN also had a panel on today, which said that there's really, you really would have to search and find, long and hard to find evidence that this is a terrorist attack against Catholics, against Christians. That's where we really get to the rough stuff here because, again, as far as CNN is concerned, the FBI coming out and saying looks like a terrorist attack, well, maybe that's not particularly appropriate. Here you go.
So I think that the question of what the charges are is something that we want to talk about, but I think that the facts have to lead to that. And it's not the essence of taking, in this case, a kid who probably sat in the pew at that church when he went to school there.
Oh, you see, he was just one of the Catholics. Oh, clearly. I mean, yeah, sure. He had the upside down cross on the rifle and also claimed to hate those at this. Well, I mean, come on.
And saying, for some reason he has some particular bent against Catholics or against Christians, there would have to be some push together, gathering together effects that would really kind of indicate that this entire intent of this crime was to injure this particular people of this particular religion.
He states that in the manifesto. He states that when he's mapping out the school and the church in the notebook that the guy left behind, and not to mention all of the large activist groups and Democrat officials who are constantly saying the transgender people are going to be dragged into camps, they're going to be killed, they're going to be erased, you need to fight back, you need to stop playing by the rules. It's ridiculous. And by the way, MSNBC decided to really, really go for it today in both the bad and then surprisingly, Mark Short over from Mike Pence's former team. I don't know how he got away with saying this on MSNBC, but anyway, here's probably the worst from MSNBC, at least on camera today. You take away guns and presto, it all goes away.
I think it's either you have to be honest and say what will actually work, which is what nobody wants to hear, which is that there are just simply way too many firearms and they're way too accessible. And even if
they're too powerful?
And they're too powerful. Even handguns too. Again, that's why in Australia, it doesn't matter if it's not politically acceptable.
Again, per capita in Australia, violence does in fact happen. Sorry to pop the bubble of that narrative that keeps coming out every single time we have an incident like this. Again, You say you want to say the thing no one wants to hear, yet you refuse to point out the entire group you have built your brand on, who is mentally ill, who has a suicide rate of 50%, might not be mentally stable. But pushing them further into it, again, may not be a good idea. And again, suggesting that this isn't targeting Catholics and Christians is wild. Here's, again, Mark Short on MSNBC today, of all places, making probably the best point made on network television today.
I agree with you, but I think that more broadly, we should be looking to identify mental illness as something that again, the full community agrees in restricting gun rights for it. But I do think that there's been a sensitivity saying gender dysphoria is not such. And I think the reality is there's been a greater and greater targeting of Christian and Catholic schools by those who view this as restrictive.
Correct. And now we get to the worst of the worst. So Jen Psaki, the first Biden White House press secretary, she got on X today and made probably the most infamous statement of the day. Quote, "Prayer is not freaking enough. Prayers does not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers." The same crew which tells you that it is not Christian to not let in illegal immigrant members of MS-13, who tells you as a Christian you need to act certain ways, who said just on Monday, well, DEI is the foundation of Christian. Now I want to tell you that prayer is worthless and it's not doing anything and you're stupid for believing in your imaginary sky daddy. Man, I cannot fathom why people aren't paying attention to this junk anymore. But this does bring us to the Democrat officials. So Dana Bash brought on Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota today, where a statement that was so discordant was made that Amy Klobuchar's staff had to backtrack because what Dana Bash said is horrible. And then what Klobuchar says as a response is so bad. Again, the staff has to go back and clean it up later on social media. Dana Bash and Klobuchar.
I mean, he's expressing something that I know you feel, and
why are you smiling, right? I'm sorry, for those listening, Klobuchar's got a grin on her face. The bleep is wrong with you.
Most people feel, which is a combination of sadness, but raw rage. That forget about thoughts and prayers. These kids were literally praying when they were murdered.
Right. Oh, but why didn't the prayers protect you? Why didn't the prayers protect you? The idiots, the disgusting, crass nature. The children passed away today, and you are dancing on their faith, on their graves. Piss off, Dana Bash. You and the horse you rode in on.
Through a church window.
It's unbelievable. And Jacob, the mayor, and his wife Sarah just had a second baby. So I know he knows this just gutturally of how this feels.
Again, thanks to MRC for this particular clip. Oh, well, the mayor just had a child. He knows how this feels. What is wrong with you self-obsessed fools? Dear heaven above, this is some wild, wild stuff. And they wonder why their approval rating sinks every single day. Now, that's not the important part of this. That's not. That is not the important part of this, but it is, in fact, a marker of why the Democrat Party, as a collective, continues to make it difficult for themselves to connect with any Americans. It is because they genuinely, overtly hold immense disdain for the majority of people in this country, and they express it clearly each and every day. Radio crew, we got to send you over to commercial. We're going to get into some of these Democrat officials as if the statements couldn't get any worse than they have. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, I hope that the particular statements made do actually play correctly. All right, looks like they are going to be on screen. For those who are watching on the live stream, those in podcast, I recommend going and watching this at your leisure here. So Schumer up first. I'm horrified by the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, closely monitoring the situation. So far, okay, students and teachers should not be putting their lives on the line by going back to school. And then he says, we must do more to stop gun violence in America. Again, I have quite a selection of firearms that have never shot anyone whatsoever. None. And yet here we are. We're going to get out the gun violence thing. If there is a person who is a victim of any kind of a crime at all, and the individual happens to be black, immediately it's racism. If they happen to be Hispanic and it's performed by a white person, immediately it's racism. If there is a person who is Asian and they are attacked, not in New York City by a black person, as like 50 crimes in the last year have shown, but if it's by a white person, maybe. In California, Stop Asian Hate, racism. Cop arrests a guy and he passes away from a fentanyl overdose, boom, Black Lives Matter, racism, immediately. They know right away. But man, I mean, if it's a transgender person, clearly it's the guns. Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader. Weapons of war have no place in our neighborhoods, streets, or schools. We do not yet know if this was a legally owned firearm, but again, more laws, as have already been shown, do not prevent the gun violence. Gavin Newsom just takes the cake for just one of the worst active officials today because, of course, we cannot even make it through the first week of school without mass shootings, and the Republicans will continue to do absolutely nothing while our kids are being gunned down. This is not true. Republicans have done something by limiting gender-affirming care, by limiting hormonal therapies, experimentation on children. The number of mentally ill people in this country as a whole are decreasing because you have fewer children today that are being told that they can magically change their gender and therefore deepen mental illness. Also, bring back mental asylums and institutions. So Gavin Newsom just going right to the gutter. Not surprising. Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. Again, children should not have to live in fear. We need gun safety reform now. Elizabeth Warren, gun violence. Representative Ilhan Omar, actually with the best statement of the day, which shocked me, to be rather honest with you, the way that you should respond. And now, will she ruin it by the end of the year? I don't, or by the end of the week. I sure hope she doesn't. But right now, decent statement here. Says, I'm beyond heartbroken over the tragic news at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, praying for the families, continue to monitor the situation. Again, correct. Correct. That is exactly what should be said. Moving forward, of course, we have Nancy Pelosi, gun violence, Bernie Sanders, the shooting of children, and then we have Representative Justin Jones from California. Horrible, horrible, horrible response. Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee extends his condolences and his prayers. Representative Justin Jones posts a picture of Representative Andy Ogles with his family holding guns. These fools. We'll be back in a second. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
The former officials, again, you knew where this was going. Barack Obama saying, well, we can't allow ourselves to become numb. Again, talking about, he does say praying for parents who've lost a child, unnecessary violence. Kamala Harris decides to double down on what Jacob Fry, the mayor, said about prayers. And said, don't just say it's about thoughts and prayers. These kids were literally praying. She says, we know the solutions. I agree with her. We do know the solutions. The reason, so 2 quick points here, and then we're going to move to the rest of the news for today, because this is crucial to understand. The reason that Democrats and the legacy media, the journalists, are not going to pull up and recognize this particular crisis, though more people in this country are abandoning them day after day. The polling is a nightmare. The voter registration, all of the available data that we have from the 30 states that monitor this in DC, they are a nightmare for the Democrats. Legacy media ratings are so low, shows are being canceled left and right because they're costing the networks tens of millions of dollars. Is because they spent 10, 15, 20 years following through into today, suggesting that science was wrong. Actually, blind affirmation makes them morally superior to you because they're the ones advocating for it. And how dare you not know love is love and gender is fluid and we're all wonderful, lovable, and nothing is ever wrong. And if you don't believe this, then you're an evil, hateful bigot who wants to kill them. And then after they whip them into a frenzy and violence takes place, They blame something totally different because, yes, going after prayer, that's going to be really popular with Americans. And they will continue down this road. They will. They haven't learned any particular lesson. They won't learn any particular lesson because by admitting that the transgender community is, by definition, mentally unstable and should not be affirmed to stay in mental instability, the same way that if someone wants to play in the street, me saying it's good to play in the street does them no favors whatsoever. That if they admit that, then they're admitting that they have been wrong for 10, 15, 20 years. And why should you take them seriously? They lied to you blatantly. They suppressed, the New York Times actively suppressed a study, multiple studies, which showed that gender hormonal treatments for children are horribly detrimental to their health, are awful for their endocrine system. They burn out and ruin their reproductive system. They sterilize the children. Of course, messing with the endocrine system unnecessarily in general, huge carcinogenic risk. And if you don't trust them there, well, you're not going to trust them on some of the other stuff. So in other major news that occurred today, Lisa Cook, the Federal Reserve Board, one of the governors on the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve, she is now suing President Trump after Donald Trump remove her from office today because it is very likely that she committed mortgage fraud, at least according to CNN's analysis of the documents in which she signed that she committed mortgage fraud very blatantly. And she's making the case through lawsuit that Trump doesn't have the authority of the president of the United States, or as the president of the United States, to fire a member of the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve. Well, thanks to the Federal Reserve Act, yeah, he does. He has the authority. Now, maybe it's good decorum or policy or procedure for the president to leave the Federal Reserve to be more independent, the organization that shouldn't exist in the first place. But I'm sorry, according to the screwing around of presidents in the first half of the 20th century, yeah, I mean, the president does in fact have the right to screw around with the Federal Reserve. Sorry, for good or for worse. Also, don't commit mortgage fraud. There's a hot take for the century. So that lawsuit will be very, very interesting as it proceeds. Also, a Wisconsin federal judge has ruled that Judge Hannah Dugan, who escorted illegal immigrants out of the courtroom so they couldn't be arrested by ICE, is now also free to be prosecuted. And as we continue down this particular road, the more the Trump administration just continues to assert the executive authority which has been given to it by Congress. It is Congress who abdicated its duty as the chief legislative branch and handed it to the president. Anytime, by the way, Congress wants to rein in the power, they're welcome to do it. Now, do I like the president wielding a massive sledgehammer, no matter who the president is? No, not particularly, no. But the game pieces and the rules of the game are, in fact, set in law at this point. I just have no sympathy for those who are suggesting that by simply standing off to the side and going, well, we should actually just be nice and hold hands. And then as soon as a Democrat is in power, then everyone gets walloped over the head again. No, mutually assured destruction or nothing. If the game pieces are out there, if baseball bats are being passed out, then wield the baseball bat or be struck in the head. We're seeing this consistently. Additionally, George and Alex Soros might be targeted with RICO charges. The president has been posting about this a lot today, asking for some investigations into how George and Alex Soros are donating money to various causes and kind of front groups that incite particular riots. I don't know if there's really going to be anything heavy that comes from that, because individuals like this are kind of known. Alex and George Soros are kind of known for operating within kind of a legal gray area to pass to front groups. And then, hey, well, if there's a fall guy down the line, well, then it just so happens that's the way it is. RICO is a very slippery charge. As we found out with President Trump a little bit ago in Georgia, as we found out with Sean Diddy Combs, whenever you slap someone with the racketeering charges, well, I mean, organized crime charges kind of need some other really hard evidence stuff. So I very much appreciate the shaking up and kind of the, let's say, playing zone that President Trump does with his administration. I hear you. I agree. I also find that rather enjoyable, when it forces people not to read an executive order and start setting American flags on fire, like former Miami Herald journalists setting flags on fire on camera to show the president, even though the actual executive order says if there's like a large protest and someone sets a U.S. flag on fire, that's inciting a riot. But people don't read. Yeah, I mean, that's good politics. And right now, here we have an entire group of the country who has taken a horrible tragedy and has used it as a platform to slam Catholics in prayer, to ignore those targeted by specific categorical systemic violence, and to protect a group who is mentally unstable. I mean, is it really surprising that you even have Harry Enton over on CNN saying over and over that this current trajectory with the Democrats is as unpopular as the, what did he say, Producer Nick? Unpopular as the, the Cracker Barrel rebrand. And they don't see it. Anyway, we'll show this particular clip here in just a second. Radio crew, we know that you guys are headed off for the evening, the end of the show for y'all. Thank you very much to the radio crew for tuning in. We will continue over on the live stream. We actually got word that one of the TV affiliates is keeping us on the air. We appreciate that. So to the radio crew, we'll catch you guys very soon. This has been the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. All right, here's this clip from Harry Enton that, again, Democrats just don't seem to be heeding.
Democratic brand right now has about the appeal with the American voter as the Cracker Barrel rebrand has with the American consumers. Bad, bad, bad. What are you doing? Oh, my goodness gracious. What are we talking about here in terms of big party registration changes in the key swing states? Let's look at the key 4 swing states that, in fact, do keep track of registration by party. Look, the Republican Party is in their best position at this point in the cycle since at least 2005, and all 4 of these key battleground states. We go out to the Southwest, Arizona. How about Nevada? Republicans haven't done this well since 2005. Oh, my goodness gracious, at this point in the cycle. North Carolina, I couldn't find a point at which Republicans were doing better at this point in the cycle. It's at least this century. It probably goes way back in the last century. And Pennsylvania, very similar. Republicans doing better at this point than at any point this century, at least as far as I could find.
He goes on like this for a good minute and 50 seconds more. It's not just polling and approving numbers. People just don't believe in any possible future advocated for by the Democrats because they have one of 3 things. Number 1, you're a really bad, mean, stinky racist, so give me reparations. That's one wing of the party. We talked about them yesterday. Number 2, you need to get behind the LGBTQ plus 2IA and also have drag queens reading to your kids and the over-sexualization of content. And you need to be okay with thruples and quadruples and all other kinds of insane nonsense. And shoot me up full of hormones or I'll kill myself, as Will Chamberlain pointed out today. Again, more often they end up engaging in violence that targets innocent children. So in that particular instance, that's the second wing of the party. The third wing of the party is blatant communism. The state is bad, sees the means of production fully. That's far beyond economic populism to, again, just full-on communism. Those are the 3 things they have to offer. Americans just aren't interested. It is not a game of the Republicans being a phenomenal party that everyone needs to run to. The game is that Republicans just don't have to be garbage. Because right now, no one is coming out in support of the Democrats. They can field a couple of like old, college-educated, liberal white people at a protest. That's it. Yikes. Now, I do want to point out this does matter because of some special elections now coming on down the line. It's the off year right after a presidential, so we're getting into the Virginia gubernatorial election. So Governor Youngkin, he's saying sayonara. You have Winsome Sears versus former CIA spook Spanberger, who's again a super nutcase. She has now vowed to rescind Governor Youngkin's February executive order that requires Virginia law enforcement to help federal authorities carry out immigration crackdowns. She called it a misuse of local resources and a threat to community trust. As Mary Catherine Ham, a brilliant author and Politico, put it, in just 2 years, within 15 miles of me, she being in Northern Virginia, she said, I can think of an attempted child abduction, a stranger raped on a jogging trail, child pornography arrests, major MS-13 leader, fatal carjacking of a grandmother perpetrated by illegal aliens with extensive records, and several who had ignored ICE detainers, just within 15 miles of her. Again, the way that those on the left have decided that going even further into the insanity, that's the move here. It's wild to suggest that that's going to get independents excited to come out and vote. Now, they may be popular with a core base of the Democrat Party. That may be true. They may be very, very excited, but it is not just about the base in any election. It is about getting the moderates of each party. We talked about this the last time the midterms were swinging around, and I wasn't really on the air here yet, but I was writing about it. It's also getting the moderates of each party out to vote. Right now, the moderate Democrats, they're not feeling it. The very few that there are left, and as you heard Harry Enton say, they're just bailing from the Dems en masse. And it doesn't help when you have guys like Representative Jamie Raskin. I want to make a small correction. I did yesterday accidentally say Senator Jamie Raskin. No, Representative Jamie Raskin. See, unlike some outlets, I'm more than happy to admit when I slip up. You have people like Representative Jamie Raskin saying, hey, crime, that's a part of history.
And the military is not supposed to be used for ordinary law enforcement purposes. In D.C., he was talking about cleaning up the graffiti and, dealing with the blight of homelessness, which are obviously local, not federal issues. And he's trying to militarize our society, intimidate his political opponents. The whole idea of picking cities based on their partisan leadership is absurd. I mean, there are lots of Republican cities and towns struggling with crime. Everybody is across the country. Always. Crime has always been part of our history. And yet crime is down. In D.C., for example, it's at a 30-year low.
No. And by the way, and I cannot help but share, Mayor Muriel Bowser, the Democrat, made it in front of the country today to say what? Oh, well, actually things have gotten worse in D.C. and it's been really terrible. And I agree with Representative Raskin. And, oh, this is just the worst thing that I've ever seen. No, Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser had a slightly different tune to play.
In the next couple of days, I will issue a mayor's order that spells out how our Emergency Operations Center will continue to engage with the federal clean and safe and beautiful task force and ensure that task force resources continue to be strategically deployed in the district. This is what we think in just a couple of weeks of experience has worked.
Hey, wait a minute. That introduction doesn't sound like she's about to slam the National Guard, saying she's ordering agencies in the city to continue working with federal authorities. Uh-oh. You can hear Hakeem Jeffries just sweating. I mean, in kind of a stuttering fashion because he can't, form sentences, but he's still sweating.
Having more federal law enforcement officers on the street. We think having more stops that got to illegal guns has helped. We think that there's more accountability in the system, or at least perceived accountability in the system.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that, so far, so good? Arrests, again, illegal gun seizures, things like that. My goodness.
That is driving down illegal behavior.
Driving down police? Troops driving down illegal behavior. Wait a minute. That's not what was written on the back of the DNC brochure.
We know that we have had fewer gun crimes, fewer homicides, and we have
fewer homicide. One reported homicide in the last 13 days. That is the lowest modern record for Washington, D.C.
Experienced an extreme reduction in carjackings. What we know...
Oh my gosh, you mean that people aren't running up and jacking a car when there are 3 National Guardsmen standing on the sidewalk? Gasp.
Is not working is a break in trust between police and community, especially with new federal partners in our community.
I love it. Then she takes a small aside and essentially kind of nods to the activists. She says, oh, there's some activists that are really unhappy that the crime has decreased and, the rest of the city is really happy with it. So she tries to kind of go back and not get kicked out of the DNC. This will be really interesting, by the way, because in the next couple of days, the Senate will be voting on a 30-day extension to Trump federalizing the police in D.C. As a lot of people in the House and the Senate have pointed out, repeal the Home Act, place Washington, D.C. under full federal control all the time. It's a federal city. Kick huge chunks of the city out. Give it back to Maryland. Who gives the flip of a wooden nickel? Common sense solutions work. I can't believe it. Virginia Allen was supposed to join us today, but the cell signal service down there was a little bit rough down in El Paso. She and Tim Kennedy over at the Daily Signal have been flying over the border near El Paso, and it's really quiet. Wow, what changed? Were new laws passed? No. What happened? President enforced the laws. Again, there's a real opportunity here for one half of the country, really larger majority, to simply respond to events with really good governance, because the left, on the other hand, has just decided to, again, lean into the mental illness in more ways than one. And it's not going to get any neater or cleaner as time goes on. That said, we're going to cut away. It looks like, at least at this moment, there are no updates to speak of, given the NATO military operations either in the Norwegian Sea. According to a couple of intelligence accounts, there appears to be a large search operation for a Russian submarine believed possibly to have threatened the Gerald R. Ford, that's a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Norwegian Sea. Additionally, the Venezuelan kind of pseudo blockade right now that the U.S. Navy is monitoring. Let's just say that there are quite a few stationed troops nearby. Again, that's not only a threat to particular communist, hyper-socialist governments, but also, again, the Hispanic, Central American, and South American drug and human trafficking cartels in the region. So we'll give you any updates on that, and we'll see you real soon. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Take care.